The Last Stand. The stars burned with the fire of dying human ships. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the battleship Valiant Dawn, watching her fleet crumble before the overwhelming might of the Zephyrian Armada. Through the massive viewport, she could see the sleek, crystalline vessels of the enemy cutting through space like predators among sheep. "Admiral, we've lost the Iron Resolve and the New Haven," reported Lieutenant Torres, her voice barely steady. "The Crimson Star is requesting permission to retreat." Sarah's jaw tightened. 3 months ago, the Zephyrians had appeared at the edge of human space without warning. Their technology was centuries ahead of anything humanity possessed. Their weapons could tear through human shields like paper, and their armor seemed impervious to conventional attacks. Worst of all, they showed no interest in negotiation or surrender terms. "Denied," Sarah replied firmly. "All ships maintain formation. We hold this line." The bridge crew exchanged worried glances. They all knew what holding the line meant. The Kepler system was humanity's last major stronghold outside of Earth itself. If they lost here, the road to humanity's homeworld would be wide open. Captain Marcus Webb floated in the zero-gravity command center of his ship, the Ghost Runner. Unlike the massive battleships engaged in the main battle, his vessel was sleek and small, built for speed and stealth rather than direct confrontation. More importantly, it was equipped with technology that no one in the galaxy had ever seen before. "All systems check out, Captain," reported his chief engineer, Lieutenant Commander Riley Park. "The quantum field generators are operating at full capacity." Marcus nodded, studying the tactical display. 2 other ships identical to his own, the Shadow Dancer and the Void Walker, waited nearby. All 3 vessels had been part of a top-secret project led by Dr. Elena Vasquez. For 5 years, she had worked on perfecting quantum stealth technology, creating ships that could bend light and energy around themselves, becoming completely invisible to any known detection method. "Captain Webb," came Dr. Vasquez's voice over the secure channel. "The quantum field is stable. You're completely invisible to all sensors, including our own." The irony wasn't lost on Marcus. Humanity's greatest technological achievement had come just in time to witness their potential extinction. The 3 stealth ships represented the most advanced vessels in human space, but they were untested in actual combat. Commander Zethkar observed the battle from his flagship, the Crystal Throne. The human resistance was admirable, but ultimately futile. His species had conquered 17 different civilizations across the galaxy, and humans were proving no more challenging than the others. "Status report," he commanded, his 4 arms working at different control panels simultaneously. 87 human vessels destroyed, Commander, his tactical officer reported. "Their remaining forces are retreating toward their inner colonies. Victory is assured." Zethkar studied the primitive human ships on his display. They were crude constructions of metal and composite materials, powered by fusion reactors that barely registered on Zephyrian sensors. How such a backward species had managed to spread across multiple star systems was beyond his understanding. "Interesting," he mused, noticing something on the tactical display. 3 human vessels have vanished from our sensors. Did they retreat? His sensor operator checked the readings. "Unknown, Commander. They simply disappeared, possibly destroyed by debris from other battles." Zethkar dismissed the matter. 3 small ships would make no difference in the outcome of this war. Back on the Valiant Dawn, Admiral Chen received a priority communication from Earth Command. The holographic image of Fleet Admiral Catherine Morrison appeared before her, looking grim. "Sarah, how much longer can you hold?" Morrison asked without preamble. "Maybe 6 hours with current losses," Chen replied honestly. "The enemy has us outgunned and outmatched. Our weapons barely scratch their hulls." Morrison nodded slowly. "There's something you need to know. 3 months ago, we lost contact with the Ghost Project ships during the initial Zephyrian attack. We assumed they were destroyed." Sarah frowned. The Ghost Project had been highly classified, but she knew it involved experimental stealth technology. What does that have to do with our current situation? We've been receiving encrypted signals from the Kepler system, Morrison continued. Signals that match Ghost Project communication protocols. Sarah, I think those ships are still out there, and I think they're preparing to engage. The news sent a shock through Sarah's system. If the experimental ships were still operational, they might have a chance. But it seemed too good to be true. Dr. Elena Vasquez worked frantically in her hidden laboratory aboard a small research station in the asteroid belt. For 3 months, she had been coordinating with the 3 stealth ships, preparing them for a mission that could change the course of the war. Marcus, are you receiving the targeting data? She transmitted to the Ghost Runner. Confirmed, Doctor, came the reply. All 3 ships have the enemy fleet positions. We're ready to begin the operation. Elena took a deep breath. The quantum stealth technology worked perfectly, but they had never tested it under combat conditions. The ships could remain invisible, but once they fired their weapons, they would become vulnerable for several seconds while the quantum fields reestablish. Remember, she told the 3 captains, you'll have the element of complete surprise, but only once. Make every shot count. Captain Webb studied his crew. Each member had volunteered for what was essentially a suicide mission. They would be striking at the heart of the enemy fleet with no support and no hope of rescue if things went wrong. Helm, take us into the enemy formation, he ordered. Stay between their larger vessels. Weapons, prepare the quantum torpedoes. The Ghost Runner moved silently through space, passing within meters of Zephyrian ships that couldn't detect its presence. The other 2 stealth ships took similar positions, threading themselves throughout the enemy fleet like invisible daggers. On the Zephyrian flagship, alarms suddenly began blaring. Commander Zethkar rushed to his tactical station, trying to understand what was happening. Report, he demanded. Sir, 3 of our heavy cruisers just exploded simultaneously, his tactical officer reported in confusion. There were no weapons signatures, no enemy ships in range. They just exploded. Zethkar stared at the display in disbelief. The 3 ships had been spread across different parts of the formation. How could they all be destroyed at the same moment by an invisible enemy? Full sensor sweep, he ordered. Find whatever did this. But the Zephyrian sensors found nothing. The quantum stealth ships had already moved to new positions, their fields reestablished, preparing for their next strike. Captain Sarah Martinez commanded the Shadow Dancer, and she smiled grimly as she watched the enemy fleet fall into chaos. The Zephyrians were frantically searching for an enemy they couldn't see, firing weapons at empty space while their ships continued to explode around them. Target the command ships, she ordered her weapons officer. Let's see how they handle losing their leadership. The second wave of attacks struck the Zephyrian fleet like lightning from a clear sky. 5 more ships simply ceased to exist, their crystalline hulls shattered by weapons that seemed to come from nowhere. Admiral Chen watched the battle unfold with amazement. The seemingly invincible Zephyrian fleet was tearing itself apart, firing at shadows while their ships were systematically destroyed by an invisible enemy. All ships, advance and engage, she ordered. Concentrate fire on their damaged vessels. The human fleet surged forward, their weapons finally finding purchase on Zephyrian ships that were already reeling from invisible attacks. For the first time since the war began, human weapons were actually destroying enemy vessels. Commander Zethkar felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. His technologically superior fleet was being systematically dismantled by an enemy he couldn't see or understand. The humans had somehow developed weapons and tactics that his sensors couldn't detect. All ships, retreat to minimum safe distance, he ordered. We need to regroup and analyze this new threat. But as the Zephyrian fleet began to withdraw, the invisible attacks intensified. The 3 stealth ships had learned the enemy's movement patterns and were striking with surgical precision. Captain Thomas Chen commanded the Voidwalker, the 3rd stealth ship. As he watched enemy vessels flee in panic, he realized they had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. A technologically inferior species was driving back a superior enemy through pure ingenuity and determination. "All ships, maintain pressure," came Dr. Vasquez's voice over the communication channel. "Don't let them regroup." The battle raged for another hour, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The Zephyrian fleet, once confident in their technological superiority, was in full retreat. They had lost more ships in this single engagement than in their previous 17 conquests combined. As the enemy fleet disappeared into hyperspace, Admiral Chen allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Humanity had faced extinction and found a way to survive. The war was far from over, but for the first time, they had proven that human creativity and determination could overcome any technological advantage. The 3 stealth ships regrouped near the Valiant Dawn. Their quantum fields still active, still invisible to all sensors. They had struck the first blow in what would become humanity's greatest victory, and they had done it without the enemy ever seeing them coming. The invisible storm. 3 weeks after the Battle of Kepler, the war had transformed into something the galaxy had never seen before. Reports filtered in from across Zephyrian space of entire fleets simply vanishing, of major installations being destroyed by invisible attackers, of a species that had learned to fight like ghosts. Commander Zethkar stood in the war room of the Zephyrian High Command, facing the Council of Elders. His 4 arms were held in a posture of submission as he delivered his report. "Honored Elders, the human resistance has evolved beyond our predictions," he said carefully. "They possess stealth technology that renders our sensors useless. Our fleets are being destroyed by enemies we cannot see or track." Elder Vorthon, the ancient leader of the Zephyrian war machine, studied the tactical displays with growing concern. In 17 previous conquests, no species had ever forced the Zephyrians to retreat. The humans were proving to be an entirely different challenge. "How many ships have we lost?" she asked. 237 vessels across 12 star systems, Zethkar replied. "The humans strike without warning, destroy everything they can, and vanish before we can respond." The Elders' crystalline features hardened. "Unacceptable. Deploy the Void Hunters. If these humans want to fight in the shadows, we'll drag them into the light." Meanwhile, in the hidden asteroid base that served as humanity's secret command center, Dr. Elena Vasquez worked around the clock to improve their quantum stealth technology. The 3 original ships had proven the concept, but they needed more vessels to turn the tide completely. "How many ships can we convert?" she asked Admiral Morrison during their daily briefing. 15 more vessels are ready for quantum field installation," Morrison replied. "But the Zephyrians are adapting. Our intelligence suggests they're developing new sensor technologies specifically designed to detect our stealth ships." Captain Marcus Webb joined the conversation via secure communication from the Ghost Runner. His ship had been operating behind enemy lines for weeks, gathering intelligence and striking at critical targets. "Doctor, we're seeing new Zephyrian ships in their fleets," he reported. "Smaller, faster vessels with sensor arrays we've never encountered before. They call them Void Hunters." Elena felt a chill of concern. The quantum stealth technology worked by bending electromagnetic radiation around the ships, making them invisible to conventional sensors. But if the Zephyrians had developed new detection methods, humanity's advantage could disappear overnight. "We need to test their capabilities," she decided. "Marcus, can you get close enough to scan one of these Void Hunters without being detected?" "Already on it, Doctor," Marcus replied. "We're tracking a patrol squadron near the Vega system. We'll attempt close reconnaissance within 12 hours." The Ghost Runner drifted through space like a whisper of shadow, its quantum fields bending light and energy around its hull. Captain Webb and his crew had become masters of invisible warfare, learning to think and move like phantoms among the stars. "Captain, I'm detecting the Zephyrian patrol," reported Lieutenant Park from the sensor station. 4 standard cruisers and 2 of the new Void Hunter vessels. Marcus studied the tactical display. The Void Hunters were smaller than regular Zephyrian ships, but they bristled with sensor equipment. Strange energy patterns emanated from their hulls, unlike anything in the human database. "Take us to within 500 meters of the Lid Void Hunter," he ordered. "Passive scans only. I want to know what makes these ships special." As the Ghost Runner approached the enemy vessel, its sensors began picking up unusual readings. The Void Hunter was emitting some kind of quantum resonance field, a scanning technique that could potentially detect distortions in space-time itself. "Captain," Park said with growing alarm, "I think their sensors are designed to detect quantum field anomalies. They might be able to see us." Before Marcus could respond, alarms began blaring on the Zephyrian ships. The Void Hunter's strange sensors had detected something unusual in the space around them. "All stop," Marcus ordered immediately. "Cut all power except minimum life support." The Ghost Runner went completely dark, drifting like a piece of space debris. For agonizing minutes, the crew held their breath as Zephyrian sensors swept the area around them. Finally, the enemy ships moved on, their sensors failing to pinpoint the exact location of the human vessel. But Marcus knew they had been close to detection. Very close. "Get me Dr. Vasquez immediately," he ordered. Back at the asteroid base, Alina listened to Marcus's report with growing concern. The Zephyrians were indeed developing countermeasures to human stealth technology. If they perfected their Void Hunter sensors, humanity's invisible fleet would become visible again. "We need a new approach," she told Admiral Morrison. "The quantum stealth won't remain effective much longer." Morrison studied the tactical situation. Humanity now had 18 stealth ships operating throughout Zephyrian space, but they were facing an enemy that was rapidly adapting to their tactics. "What do you propose?" he asked. Alina had been working on theoretical improvements to the quantum stealth system. "What if we don't just hide from their sensors? What if we actively jam them?" She explained her concept. Instead of simply bending electromagnetic radiation around the ships, they could create quantum interference patterns that would disrupt enemy sensors within a wide radius. Any Zephyrian ship that got too close would find its detection systems completely scrambled. "How long to implement this upgrade?" Morrison asked. 2 weeks if we push everything to maximum priority," Alina replied. "Do it," Morrison ordered. "And pray we have 2 weeks." Captain Sarah Martinez commanded the Shadow Dancer as it stalked a Zephyrian supply convoy near the edge of their space. This was exactly the kind of target that could cripple enemy operations, but she noticed something troubling. "Captain, I'm detecting Void Hunter escorts with the convoy," her tactical officer reported. 2 of them, flanking the cargo ships. Sarah studied the enemy formation. The Zephyrians were learning to protect their vital supply lines with ships specifically designed to hunt invisible enemies. This mission would be far more dangerous than previous operations. "Signal the Void Walker," she ordered. "Tell Captain Chen we need a coordinated strike. Hit the Void Hunters first, then the supply ships." The 2 stealth ships positioned themselves on opposite sides of the convoy, their quantum fields keeping them completely hidden from conventional sensors. But Sarah could see the strange energy patterns emanating from the Void Hunters as they swept space with their new detection systems. "On my mark," she transmitted to the Void Walker. 3, 2, 1, execute. Both stealth ships opened fire simultaneously, their quantum torpedoes streaking toward the Void Hunters. The weapons struck their targets with devastating effect, but something unexpected happened. Instead of being destroyed outright, the Void Hunter's quantum sensors overloaded in a cascade of energy that created a temporary rift in space-time. For several seconds, both human ships became partially visible as the local quantum fields destabilized. "Emergency evasion," Sarah ordered as Zephyrian weapons fire began tracking toward their position. The Shadow Dancer and Void Walker managed to escape, but the engagement had revealed a critical weakness in human tactics. The Void Hunters were designed not just to detect stealth ships, but to disrupt their hiding capabilities when destroyed. Dr. Vasquez received the battle reports with a mixture of pride and concern. Her ships were still winning, but the enemy was learning faster than anticipated. "We need to accelerate the quantum jamming upgrade," she told her engineering team. "The Zephyrians are turning their own weaknesses into weapons against us." 2 weeks later, the upgraded stealth ships were ready for their ultimate test. All 18 vessels had been equipped with the new quantum jamming systems, creating an invisible fleet that could not only hide from enemy sensors, but actively blind them. The target was the Zephyrian stronghold at Alpha Centauri, the largest enemy base in human space. If they could destroy this installation, it would force the Zephyrians to abandon their invasion entirely. Admiral Chen coordinated the attack from the Valiant Dawn, which had been upgraded with quantum stealth capabilities. For the first time, she would personally lead humanity's invisible fleet into battle. "All ships report ready," came the voice of Captain Webb from the Ghost Runner. 18 stealth vessels in position around the target. The Alpha Centauri base was massive, protected by over 100 Zephyrian ships, including dozens of the new Void Hunters. It should have been an impregnable fortress. "Commence jamming operations," Admiral Chen ordered. The 18 stealth ships activated their quantum interference systems simultaneously, creating a sphere of sensor disruption around the entire enemy base. Every Zephyrian detection system within 50,000 kilometers suddenly went blind. "All ships, weapons free," Chen commanded. "Target their command centers and power generators." What followed was the most one-sided battle in galactic history. The Zephyrian fleet found itself completely unable to detect or track their attackers, while human weapons struck from every direction. Ships exploded, installations crumbled, and the mighty Alpha Centauri base began to collapse under the invisible assault. Commander Zethkar watched his greatest stronghold being systematically destroyed by enemies he couldn't see. His sensors showed nothing but empty space, while explosions lit up the darkness around him. "All ships, emergency retreat," he ordered. "Abandon the base." But there was nowhere to run. The human ships had surrounded the entire installation, their quantum jamming creating a sphere of blindness that followed the fleeing Zephyrian vessels wherever they went. Within 4 hours, the Alpha Centauri base was nothing but debris floating in space. Every Zephyrian ship had been destroyed or had fled the system. Humanity's invisible fleet had achieved total victory without losing a single vessel. The psychological impact on the Zephyrian Empire was devastating. For the first time in their history, they faced an enemy they could not see, could not track, and could not defeat. Their technological superiority meant nothing against opponents who fought like ghosts. 3 months later, Zephyrian forces began withdrawing from human space entirely. The invasion that was supposed to conquer humanity in weeks had become a nightmare that the aliens could not escape. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Valiant Dawn, now permanently equipped with quantum stealth technology, and watched the last enemy ships disappear into hyperspace. Humanity had not only survived extinction, but had become the most feared military force in the galaxy. "Admiral," reported Lieutenant Torres, "we're receiving surrender terms from the Zephyrian High Command." Chen smiled. The species that had conquered 17 civilizations was offering to surrender to the humans they had once dismissed as primitive. The invisible fleet had changed the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Dr. Elena Vasquez received the news in her laboratory, surrounded by the quantum field generators that had saved humanity. Her invisible ships would continue to patrol human space, ensuring that no enemy would ever again catch humanity unprepared. The age of visible warfare was over. The age of the silent fleet had begun, and humanity stood at its helm. Masters of battles fought in shadow and won without being seen.